Westernspring Television. Ours it is.
President Muhammadu Buhari asked the Senate to approve request to pay judgment debt. Court dismisses police application seeking to arraign Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti over alleged assault. Members of Joint Health Workers Union Johesu State protest in Abuja ahead of strike action. On the foreign scene, Pakistan considers banning former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party for alleged attack. Good evening. This is news at 7 on Westernspring Television. My name is Femi Olanipekun. President Muhammadu Buhari has asked the Senate to approve a request to pay judgment debt and a sum of $566 million, 98 million pounds, and 226 billion naira. The monies were owed by the federal government through the issuance of promissory notes. President Buhari's letter of request was read at plenary by Senate President Ahmed Lawan today. According to the letter, the judgment debts have to be settled through the issuance of promissory notes, which will then be redeemed over time through provisions in the budgets of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Meanwhile, Chancellor of Afebabalola University, Ado-Ekiti Afebabalola, has cautioned the National Assembly against approving any fresh loan facility or request regarding financial matters for the outgoing government of President Muhammadu Buhari. Mr. Babalola, who expressed disbelief that President Buhari could be seeking a fresh loan despite the country's mounting debt profile, said the National Assembly should not accede to such a request a few days before the end of the tenure of the Buhari administration. He spoke in Ado-Ekiti at the 12th Are Afebabalola annual public lecture organized by the Nigerian Bar Association Ado-Ekiti branch. President Buhari had recently written to the Senate to seek its approval for an $800 million loan to be secured from the World Bank for the National Social Safety Net Program. And the Senate has passed for second reading a bill seeking to compensate victims of the NSAS protest. The bill was sponsored by Senator Gershom Bassey, a member of the People's Democratic Party Cross River State. Senator Bassey, in his lead debate, said the bill seeks to provide for the establishment of the NSAS Victims Compensation Fund. According to him, the NSAS victims have been left to continually groan under the pains of injury inflicted by hoodlums during the protest. He said eventual establishment of the fund and implementation of the recommendation of the Judicial Panel of Inquiry and Senate Joint Committee on NSAS would certainly bring succor to the victims of the 2020 NSAS nationwide protest. President of the Senate, Ahmed Lawan, referred the bill to the Committee on Special Duties for further legislative input and report back to plenary in 1 week. In Kogi State, the House of Assembly has cleared 9 members of allegations bordering on terrorism and welcomed them back to the House. It will be recalled that the State Assembly announced the suspension of the 9 members of the 24th of March 2023. A suspension followed a letter read in the House from the Kogi State Governor Yahaya Bello, alleging that the lawmakers engaged in terrorism based on security reports. The lawmakers were exonerated in an announcement made on the floor of the State House of Assembly during today's plenary session. The members are expected to resume work with immediate effect. Moving on, President Muhammadu Buhari has urged the military and other security agencies to remain resolute in tackling security challenges bedeviling the country. Buhari spoke yesterday in Abuja at the regimental dinner organized in his honor. While acknowledging the military's efforts in the war against terrorism, banditry, and all theft, Buhari said the armed forces must not rest on their oars until insecurity is defeated. He said the regimental dinner is very significant because it gives him another opportunity to reflect positively on the armed forces past, present, and future. The president, who arrived late at the event, apologized and said he had been under pressure to keep up with the festivities planned for the inauguration, while also completing official obligations.
Please permit me to use this opportunity to express my sincere appreciation to the officers and soldiers of the armed forces of Nigeria for their unwavering loyalty, hard work, dedication, and selfless service to our beloved nation. I am fully aware of all your sacrifices and commitments in tackling the myriad security challenges and your contributions to the successful elections in our country. However, until the issue of insecurity is surmounted, much more is still desired from the armed forces of Nigeria. Consequently, the armed forces of Nigeria and other security agencies must always remain resolute in face of the country's security challenges. In this vein, our administration, though winding down soon, will never relent in providing the needed support to the military to enable them to effectively carry out their constitutional responsibilities. Let me now thank the Chief Host, the Chief of Defense Staff, the Honorable Minister of Defense, Service Chiefs, and the other heads of security agencies at this event for your dedicated service to the nation. I commend you and thank our esteemed guests for coming to witness this historic occasion.
In the meantime, President Muhammadu Buhari today failed to dissolve his cabinet. Many had expected that the president would dissolve his cabinet at the valedictory Federal Executive Council meeting, which he chaired in Abuja today. However, the president instead directed his ministers to return to their offices and continue work. Minister of Information and Culture, Lai Mohammed, made this known at a briefing shortly after the fake valedictory session. Even though the president had taken official pictures with the council, the information minister debunked news making the rounds that the cabinet has been dissolved. According to Mr. Mohammed, the ministers will work until the 29th of May. And here in Osun State, Permanent Secretary of the State Ministry of Education, Adelani Adiriola, has confirmed that the students of the Fakunle Comprehensive High School who were hospitalized yesterday due to inhaling tear gas canisters discharged from a mobile base opposite the school have been discharged. Olayinka Ali has the rest of the story.
The protection of children should be paramount, both at home and in school, because they could be vulnerable. Sadly, some students of Fakunle Comprehensive High School, Oshogbo, the Osun State capital, were shocked by the release of tear gas canisters from the mobile base opposite the school during a drill and fitness exercise at the premises. According to the Permanent Secretary of Osun State Ministry of Education, Adelani Adiriola, he received a report from the school's principal, who stated that 23 students inhaled the fumes of tear gas canisters and reacted to it. Adiriola said immediately the principal got to know of this, they were rushed to a nearby hospital and the Uni Osun Teaching Hospital.
The Mopol of station is directly opposite Fakunle Comprehensive High School. And as they normally do, they were having their morning drills, and because of doing that, there was some explosion of tear gas. There were some tear gas explosions, and this happened to be blown to the school. The fumes of the gas were blown to the school, and some students were affected by these fumes. And immediately the principals got to know about this. They quickly called the ambulance, to ferry students to hospitals, to a nearby hospital first.
Contrary to the Permanent Secretary, the head of operations, Osun State's Emergency Medical Services and Ambulance System, Elizabeth Aruwoshafe, claimed the team rescued a total number of 35 students, while 28 students were taken to the hospital. The others were resuscitated in their ambulance. She stated also that there was a student who was asthmatic, but was later resuscitated and discharged from the hospital.
The event was so bad. In fact, we have to evacuate the puppy 3 times. We have to look for backup, but we thank God that we were able to do it. In fact, there was one guy there, I think the age of 10 to 12. I mean, it should be the girl should be 15 years, according to the history the paramedics gave me, that is having a breathing attack, which I suspected to be asthmatic. And what we have in our vehicle, the consumable, we make use of it. And before they could convey the puppy to Uniosun, it has calmed down, and they observed the puppy, and she was discharged yesterday.
The National Publicity Director for the Nigerian Parents Teachers Association, Dr. Ekundayo Adebola, in his opinion, feels that the Mopol base should be relocated or their drilling suspended to weekends when students would not be in school so as to prevent future occurrence.
The mobile police force has been there for long. And this is not the first time, I can tell you authoritatively, this is not the first time such a things will happen. It is because it has not gotten to this level. That is why the public don't know that it has been happening before. Even the people living around that area, they have been experiencing it, but not to this magnitude. But we thank God that, we were able to manage it, and it's still under control.
Similarly, Jamaa Nigerian Society of Engineers, Osogbo branch, engineer Wasiu Idowu, whose office is located in that axis, suggested that in order to prevent such an incident from happening again, the Mopol base, which is a security outfit, can be moved to another location or they control their activities during the day.
From engineering perspective, anything you want to site or locate, you do environmental impact assessments. By the time that place was, they were settled there, that place was okay for them. But from the look of things now that the town expanded, some of the activities affect the surrounding interests, like school. There are garages around, there are some other private establishments there, and it has been confirmed that anytime they are doing their drilling, the effect of their canister is felt by almost everybody around that. And the particular one that happened yesterday led to a lot of students getting hospitalized.
The police public relations officer in Osun State, Yemisi Opalola, stated that the Mopol officers have been corrected about such actions, urging members of the public not to panic because it is a normal routine.
It's a normal routine exercise of the police. Whenever we have such drill going on, there used to be, it's part of the things that that the police use to train their policemen, to make them to be, to be up to the task whenever they encounter whatever things that may be like that, and that is what they are doing. It's not anything that is.
Meanwhile, the Permanent Secretary of the Osun State Ministry of Education confirmed that all the students affected have been discharged and normalcy have been restored in the school premises. Olayinka Ali, Westernspring Television News.
The Lagos State Governorship Election Petitions Tribunal has dismissed the petitions filed by the Allied People's Movement, APM, and Action People's Party, APP, against the election of Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu and his deputy Obafemi Hamzat. A chairman of the three-man tribunal, Justice Arum Ashom, dismissed the petitions after the petitioners withdrew them. At the sitting of the tribunal today, the petitioners, through their lawyers, Henry Bailo, representing the APM, and Francis Essay for the APP, told the tribunal that their clients had lost interest in pursuing the petitions. Justice Ashom then dismissed the petitions. A Chief Magistrates Court sitting in the Yaba area of Lagos State has dismissed an application by the Nigeria Police Force seeking to arraign Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti over alleged assaults on a police officer. Magistrate Adiola Olatunbosun adjourned till July 3rd to await legal advice from the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions on the matter. The musician was in court today for the hearing of his case. He was released on bail yesterday evening following his detention at the State Criminal Investigative Department, Panti, since May 15th. At the resumed hearing of the case, police counsel Cyril Ejiofor sought the leave of court to arraign the singer, having preferred a charge against him. For Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Femi Falana, who was representing the defendants, urged the court to dismiss the application and instead accused the police of disobeying the subsisting orders of the court. In her ruling, the magistrate insisted on awaiting the DPP's advice before proceeding with the case. Elsewhere, members of the Joint Health Workers Union, JOHESU, today staged a protest in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, over the federal government's failure to meet their demands. The workers have also resolved to embark on an indefinite strike from midnight of May 24th. They are demanding the payment of hazard allowance and an adjustment of the consolidated health salary structure. They also want an end to the discrimination in the health industry. Unions under JOHESU, such as the Medical and Health Workers Union of Nigeria and Association of Hospital and Administrative Pharmacists of Nigeria, have instructed the members to join the strike from midnight of today. You are watching News at 7 on Westernspring Television. Still to come, Pakistan considers banning former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party for alleged attack. We'll bring you more on these when we return.
Born 16th September 1923, named Harry Lee Kwan and known as Lee Kuan Yew, he was often addressed by his initials of LKY. Lee Kuan Yew was a barrister and the first Prime Minister of Singapore between 1959 and 1990. Educated at Raffles Institution from 1936 to 1940 and the Fitzwilliam House between 1947 and 1949, Lee Kuan Yew established a highly effective and anti-corrupt governance system that midwives the transformation of Singapore into a high net worth income economy within a generation. He never hid his exception to Western mode democratic ideal, which he believed had not assisted developing nations to attain good government. Before his death on 23rd March 2015, the People's Action Party, which he founded, had used its political influence to establish the United World College of Southeast Asia to expand his economic ideas among countries that constitute the Asian Tiger. Westernspring Television identifies Lee Kuan Yew as a major character in history. Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela was an anti-apartheid activist who gave his all for the elimination of what has been described as the world's most vicious rule of the unjust and man's inhumanity against man. He was born July 18, 1918 in Mvezo, South Africa. Educated and trained as a successful legal practitioner, he took up the gauntlet of a human activist against segregation by the minority white suprematists in South Africa. At the climax of his trial for treason, orchestrated by the minority South African government, the great crusader for democratic equality was prepared to pay the supreme sacrifice to establish majority rule in his native land. He told white jurists that if achieving freedom for his people was worth his life, he was prepared to die. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in Robben Island, described as the most notorious prison in the world. It was from this same prison that he came out as a free man to assume office as South Africa's first black president in 1994. Westernspring Television identifies Nelson Mandela as a watershed character in history. Named Mao Zedong at birth, but globally known as Mao Zedong, he was a Chinese revolutionary and founder, People's Republic of China, which he led as chairman of the Chinese Communist Party from 1949 until his death in 1976. He was a communist who believed in the attainment of power by the instrumentality of gun. His wise saying, "Political power grows out of the barrel of gun," formed the major plank of his revolutionary struggle for the control of China. In the long span of his leadership and political power, Mao Zedong relentlessly entrenched the communist philosophy in China, which emphasized the revolutionary struggle of the vast majority of people against the exploiting class and their state structures. The communist leaders defined the class struggle as people's war. Mao Zedong was a story of grass to grace, having risen from peasantry to preeminent status as China's most respected leader. Westernspring Television identifies Mao Zedong as a major character in history.
Welcome back. This is still news at 7 on Westernspring Television. A reminder of our headlines. President Muhammadu Buhari asked the Senate to approve request to pay judgment debt. Court dismisses police application seeking to arraign Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti over alleged assault. Members of Joint Health Workers Union, Joheso State protest in Abuja ahead of strike action. And on the foreign scene, Pakistan considers banning former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party over alleged attack. The governor of Kwara State, Abdurrahman Abdulrazak, has been elected as the new chairperson of the Nigeria Governors Forum NGF. Governor of Sokoto and outgoing acting chairperson of the forum, Aminu Tambuwal, announced the development in a statement. Governor Tambuwal said Governor Abdulrazak was elected through consensus and be deputized by the governor of Oyo State, Seyi Makinde. Governor Abdulrazak is of the All Progressives Congress, APC, while Governor Makinde is a member of the People's Democratic Party, PDP. And barely 2 weeks to the end of the 9th Assembly, the Ondo State House of Assembly says it has passed no fewer than 63 bills into law in the last 4 years. The House also disclosed that the anti-grazing law and the bill that established the Amotekun Corps were positively controversial. However, the House noted that it had had a good relationship with the state executive and the judicial arm of government of the state. Speaking at the valedictory media meeting held at the Assembly Complex in Akure today, the chairman, House Committee on Information, Gbenga Omoli, explained that there were debates and arguments on the bills before they were passed. On the foreign scene, Pakistan is considering banning former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party for allegedly attacking the state. The former cricket star is embroiled in critical face of a decades-old rivalry between civilian politicians and powerful military, which has ruled directly or overseen governments throughout Pakistan's history. The face-off has brought widespread protest by Khan supporters, raising new fears about the stability of the nuclear-armed country as it struggles with its worst economic crisis in decades. Defense Minister Khawaja Asif told journalists today that Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party had attacked the very basis of the state, which could not be tolerated. In Europe, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu has promised a harsh response to cross-border incursions from Ukraine. His comments came after Moscow said it had defeated an attack in the Belgorod region. However, Regional Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said there had been a large number of drone attacks overnight. And while Ukraine denies involvement in the raid, and 2 Russian paramilitary groups opposed to Russian President Vladimir Putin say they were behind it. And still on the Russia-Ukraine war, United States has distanced itself from an incursion into Russia, with Moscow says ended in the defeat of armed insurgents who entered from Ukraine. Parts of the border region of Belgorod came under attack on Monday, and one of the largest cross-border raids since Russia invaded its neighbor last year.
The U.S. has distanced itself from an incursion into Russia, which Moscow says ended in the defeat of armed insurgents who entered from Ukraine. Parts of the border region of Belgorod came under attack on Monday in one of the largest cross-border raids since Russia invaded Ukraine. The two-day incursion from Ukraine into Russia's western borderlands could force the Kremlin to divert troops from front lines as Kyiv prepares a major counter-offensive to deal Moscow a psychological blow, military analysts say. Experts added that although Kyiv has denied any role, the biggest cross-border raid from Ukraine since Russia invaded 15 months ago was almost certainly coordinated with Ukraine's armed forces as it prepares to attempt to recapture territory. In a news briefing on Tuesday, Matthew Miller said that it is up to Ukraine to decide how to conduct this war.
We have made very clear to the Ukrainians that we don't enable or encourage attacks outside Ukrainians' borders, but I do think it's important to take a step back and remind everyone and remind the world that, of course, it is Russia that launched this war. It's Russia that continues to launch attacks on civilians in Ukraine. It's Russia that's targeted schools and hospitals and civilian infrastructure. So it is up to Ukraine to decide how they want to conduct their military operations, but it is Russia that has been the aggressor in this war.
Villages in Belgorod near the border were evacuated from coming under fire. Russia says 70 attackers were killed and has insisted the fighters were Ukrainian. But Kyiv denies involvement, and two Russian paramilitary groups opposed to Russian President Vladimir Putin said they were behind the incursion. The groups were set up during Russia's full-scale invasion and attracted Russian volunteer fighters wanting to fight against their own country alongside Ukraine and topple President Vladimir Putin. Regional Governor Vyacheslav Gladkov said one civilian had died during the violence and several others were injured. In a later development, he said the region had been subject to a large number of drone attacks overnight on Tuesday. He said the attacks damaged private vehicles, houses and offices, but there were no victims. Temitope Ajijola Oluola, Westernspring Television News.
United Nations chief has said the world is failing to protect civilians as the death toll of people caught up in conflict surged more than 50% from the previous year. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres told the Security Council to live up to its commitments to protect civilians as enshrined in international humanitarian law, citing examples of civilian deaths in Ukraine and Sudan, schools destroyed in Ethiopia, and damage to water infrastructure in Syria. In 2022, the UN said there was a 53% increase in civilian deaths compared with 2021, with nearly 17,000 civilian deaths recorded across 12 conflicts. Mr. Guterres said UN research into war zones showed 94% of victims from explosive weapons in populated areas were civilians last year, while more than 117 million people faced acute hunger, primarily because of war and insecurity.
We must never lose sight of the meaning and purpose of international humanitarian law. It is the difference between life and death, between restraint and anarchy, between losing ourselves in horror and retaining our humanity. But law overlooked is law undermined. We need action and accountability to ensure it is respected, and that depends on political will. Peace is the best form of protection. We must intensify our efforts to prevent conflict, protect civilians, preserve peace, and find political solutions to war.
In the United Kingdom, police have refused to say why its officers were following two boys who died in a crash a short time later, sparking a riot in Cardiff. Harvey Evans and Kerry Sullivan died in the early area on Monday. Deputy Chief Constable Rachel Bacon said police were on Grand Avenue when the crash happened on Snowdon Road, about half a mile away. But she would not answer questions about the CCTV, citing the ongoing police watchdog investigation. Ms. Bacon said no other vehicles were involved in the fatal crash, but would not comment on why police were spotted following the teenagers on CCTV.
All I can tell you is that we have done our best in the circumstances we face with the information we've had. We've been honest and direct. I'm here today to give you the information I have now. I've still got hundreds of hours of investigation that will need to take place. I know you're not going to get every answer you want today, but speaking to the communities of Ely, we are here to protect you. We absolutely understand that it was a terrible night, and we need to focus on bringing those offenders to justice.
The BBC has just seen footage in the last half an hour that is time coded from 1801. It's from Stanway Road. It shows two boys on their bike coming up from Archer Road following the police. Now this seems to contradict your timeline, because it seems as though the only reason they couldn't get on to the road where the crash happened was there's bollards at the end.
I've been really clear that I've given you factual and accurate information to the Would you let me finish? Thank you. Absolutely, to the best of my knowledge at this moment in time. I have told you that I have hundreds of hours of CCTV. I could have waited, could have not come here today to try and talk about what we know and the timeline as we understand it. But I'm here today to talk to the communities of Ely, to let them know that we absolutely understand their concern.
Still ahead, the Central Bank of Nigeria raises interest rate from 18% to 18.5%. We have more on these and other business stories after this break. Please do stay with us.
Aminatu, the legendary Queen of Zazzau, is best known to historians as Queen Amina of Zaria, an old walled town and capital of the Hausa state of Zazzau. Amina was a great warrior and the first woman to rule the ancient kingdom of Zazzau. Her 34 years as queen witnessed an unprecedented expansion of Zazzau by conquests. Queen Amina of Zaria belongs to the class of Amazons by the might of her army and her strings of conquests. She opened Zaria to trans-border trade and was said to have initiated kola nut cultivation in the ancient kingdom. The Hausa Muslim figure was born in 1533 and died in 1610 at the age of 77 years. Folklores remember Aminatu, the Queen of Zazzau, as a brave, smart and talented leader whose giant statue now adorns the National Arts Theatre in Lagos, Nigeria, while many educational institutions bear her name. Westernspring Television identifies Queen Amina as a watershed character in history. The British Empire was the largest and the most powerful in the world. At its zenith, the empire embraced a quarter of the earth's land surface and imposed her imperial majesty's rule on more than 458 million peoples across nations and continents. The empire took off with overseas possessions and trading posts established by England, spread over 3 million kilometers between 16th and early 18th century. Like previous empires, the British Empire began to crumble on its weight of overstretched territories and growing unrest in our various colonies. Today, the British Empire no longer exists. What is in place is the Commonwealth of Nations, a loose association of sovereign states which recognize the King of England as the titular head. Westernspring Television identifies the British Empire as a watershed empire in history. Born Jeremiah Oyeni Obafemi on March 6, 1905, Obafemi Awolowo was a prime architect of Nigeria's independence and most consummate advocate of free education and social welfare in Africa's most populous nation. Erudite politician, thinker, and philosopher, Awo was fondly addressed by associates and political colleagues, brought his unique attributes to bear on governance in the defunct Western region. He administered as a leader of government business and the premier between 1955 and 1958. Obafemi Awolowo's premiership witnessed pioneering in multi-sectoral policy initiatives and execution. The Western region under his administration paraded several enviable records. First television station in Africa, first real estate in Nigeria, first high-rise building in Nigeria, first modern sports stadium in Nigeria, first agricultural settlement in Nigeria, first modern civil service secretariat in Nigeria, and first industrial estate in Nigeria. His face is on 100 naira denomination as a mark of honor for his distinguished services to his country. Westernspring Television identifies Obafemi Awolowo as a major character in history.
You're welcome back. And now to business. The Policy Setting Committee of the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, has raised the monetary policy rate, which measures interest rate, from 18% to 18.5%. Last week, Nigeria's inflation rate rose to 22.22% amidst a surge in food prices. The monetary policy rate is the baseline interest rate in an economy. Every other interest rate used within an economy is built on it. The governor of the Apex Bank, Godwin Emefiele, announced the development to journalists after the committee's meeting at the CBN headquarters in Abuja. The development is the third consecutive time the Apex Bank will be raising the benchmark rate this year. The CBN boss said although the continued rise in headline inflation remained a significant problem confronting the economy, other macroeconomic variables are moving in the right direction despite observed headwinds.
Fears of a global financial contagion associated with the banking crisis in the US and in the Euro. Consequently, the International Monetary Fund (IMF) in its April 2023 World Economic Outlook further downgraded output growth forecast for 2023 to 2.8% compared with its January forecast of 2.9%. Growth is however expected to improve moderately to 3% in 2024. And domestic economic development. According to the Bureau of Statistics, NBS, real gross domestic product grew by 2.31% year-on-year in the first quarter of 2023 compared with 3.11% in the corresponding period of 2022 and 3.52% in the preceding quarter. The economy moderated on its current recovery trajectory, posting positive albeit lower growth for the 10th consecutive quarter in spite of a multitude of headwinds to its full recovery. The growth performance was driven largely by the sustained growth in the services and agricultural sectors, progressive uptrend in economic activities across several subsectors, and sustenance of broad-based support by the bank in growth-enhancing sectors. Star projections show that output growth recovery is expected to continue reasonably in 2023, given the significant improvement in the composite purchasing managers index, which rose to 51.1 index points in April 2023 from 42.6 index points in March 2023. Please let's have our phones.
A report by the Nigerian Bureau of Statistics shows that the nation's gross domestic product growth fell to 2.31% in the first quarter of 2023 from 3.52% in the fourth quarter of 2022. According to an NBS report, the decline was due to the adverse effect of the cash crunch experienced during the quarter. The report suggests that the performance of the GDP in the first quarter of 2023 was driven mainly by the services sector, which recorded a growth of 4.35% and contributed 57.29% to the aggregate GDP. The agriculture sector grew by minus 0.90%, lower than the growth of 3.1% recorded and the first quarter of 2022. And still talking business, the House of Representatives is calling for a forensic audit of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited, aimed at unraveling the discrepancies in importation and supply of petrol, commencing from 2015 to date. The House reached the resolution after considering the report of its ad hoc committee on fuel consumption. The committee observed that there was no record indicating that a certain volume of petrol was discharged to a particular retail outlet or dispensed, hence the difficulty in ascertaining the actual daily consumption of the product across the country. The House is charging the Nigerian Midstream, Downstream and Petroleum Regulatory Authority to monitor trucks conveying petrol within locations and compel a daily data report on the dispense of the product at all retail fueling stations. President Muhammadu Buhari has sworn in 7 federal commissioners of the Revenue Mobilization, Allocation and Fiscal Commission. The president performed the brief ceremony before the commencement of the valedictory Federal Executive Council meeting at the State House, Abuja. The federal commissioners include Ayogu Eze, Enugu State, Peter Para, Imo State, Awa Aliyu, Jigawa State, and Rakiya Haruna from Kebbi State. Others are Ismaila Gaka, Kwara State, Kolawole Abimbola, Oyo State, and Ayuba Ngako, representing the Federal Capital Territory. At the meeting, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo also presented the report on the Health Reform Committee to the President. The committee, chaired by Professor Osinbajo, was put in place to develop a roadmap to achieving universal health coverage in the country. Its recommendations include improving funding of health sector above 10%. In sports, Crystal Palace Eberichi Eze received his first call-up to the England squad today as Raheem Sterling was omitted for Euro 2024 qualifiers against Malta and North Macedonia. This could end the dream of many Nigerians who have been hoping for him to represent the Super Eagles at senior international level. Eze, who was born in Greenwich, South London to Nigerian parents, is also eligible to play for Nigeria, but the England call-up may end that possibility. He has represented England at both under-20 and under-21 levels.
Well, we've liked him for a long time. He was very unfortunate. I think just before the Euros, we were going to call him into a prep camp to have a look at him, and he got a bad injury. The day we were going to, I remember talking to Roy Hodgson about him then, and Roy telling me he'd picked up an injury in training that day. So I think he has finished the season really strongly. He can play in a couple of positions across that attacking line. He's a goal threat. He's got nice ability and burst of speed to go past people and to take people out of the game with dribbling skills. So, yeah, we're looking forward to seeing him a bit closer, and everybody I speak to talks brilliantly about him as a person as well.
Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag says the club must strive for more, even though his team looks set to clinch a place in next season's Champions League. United need just 1 point from their final 2 Premier League games against Chelsea and Fulham to secure a top 4 finish after a season out of Europe's elite club competition. Ten Hag also ended the club's 6-year wait for a trophy in his first season in charge by lifting the League Cup in February. The Dutchman could even end his debut campaign in England with 2 trophies as United faced local rivals Manchester City in the FA Cup final. But Ten Hag has insisted the Red Devils' targets must be even higher next season as they seek to rekindle former glories.
We want to compete with the best, and then you have to be in the Champions League. So simple. We want to compete with the best, and then you have to be in Champions League. So then in the Premier League, you have to qualify yourself to be under the first 4. And that's not easy because there are many competing for it, or many think they should be in. And so, yeah, we are one of them.
Former Netherlands and Manchester United striker Ruud van Nistelrooy has quit his job as PSV Eindhoven coach with immediate effect. Despite winning this year's KNVB Cup and current Eredivisie runners-up, Van Nistelrooy told the southern Dutch club's players and coaching staff he was leaving because of lack of support within the club. PSV said in a statement that Van Nistelrooy's decision came after several discussions about internal affairs over the past few days and a meeting with PSV's board of directors yesterday evening. Van Nistelrooy's assistant manager, Fred Rutten, will take over the coaching ahead of Saturday's game. And while in Spain, Jordi Alba will leave Barcelona this summer after the Spanish champions agreed to mutually terminate his contract a season early. 34-year-old Alba joined the club in 2012 from Valencia and has won 6 La Liga titles, 5 Copa del Rey trophies, and Champions League in 2015. He has made 458 appearances for the Catalan club, including 29 this season, as Barcelona won La Liga. Alba will join club captain Sergio Busquets in leaving this summer. And that's all at this hour. But before we go, here is a recap of our major stories. President Muhammadu Buhari has asked the Senate to approve a request to pay judgment debt in the sum of $566 million, 98 million pounds, and 226 billion naira. A chief magistrate court sitting in the Yaba area of Lagos State has dismissed an application by the Nigeria Police Force seeking to arraign Afrobeat singer Seun Kuti over alleged assaults on a police officer. And members of the Joint Health Workers Union, JOHESU, today staged a protest in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, about the federal government's failure to meet their demands. And the foreign scene, Pakistan is considering banning former Prime Minister Imran Khan's party for allegedly attacking the state. Please do follow us on our social media handles on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Westernspring Television. You can also watch us live on our YouTube channel at Westernspring Television. My name is Femi Olanipek. Thank you so much for watching. Good evening.